the good Vice President has a dissenting opinion with regards to this peace agreement. First of all, this is not yet my period of interpellation. This is just a manifestation with regards to the four proclamation. First, Mr. Chairman, my first statement will be addressed to those individuals or groups that opposes this amnesty proclamation. Well, I do respect dissenting opinion in this country, but I would just like to correct, especially those elected and appointed and career service officials of this government. Kasi po, these amnesty proclamations is part and parcel, not only the program of the government, but the commitment of the government. Since the time of Cory Aquino, former President Ramos, era Estrada, in which the RPMP, RPABB started the backdoor peace agreement during the time of then President, the late President Fidel Ramos. And we signed a document or an agreement during the time of then President Era Estrada. In short, Mr. Chairman, dear colleagues, this is a commitment by the government. This is not just a mere program of the government, but this is a commitment by the government. And well, in fact, Mr. Chairman, and for the record, just to remind everyone and for those who are not part of the 18th Congress, then President Duterte also issued an amnesty proclamation. Unfortunately, yung application is only good for 1 year. And this four proclamation now is just an implementation of the government commitments. And we as public servants should comply and support to that commitment of this government, because all peace agreement being signed represents the government of the Republic of the Philippines. In the case of NMLF, in the case of RPMP, RPABB, in the case of MILF, and in the case of former CPP, NPA members with a localized peace agreement. Because I know for the fact that, of course, not all recipients of this proclamation, regards to the former CPP, NPA, are product of the localized peace talks. But they are the product of the program of government, which the government and all of us should support and commit to it, because that is the commitment and program of this government and the previous governments. Well, in fact, Mr. Chairman, with due respect to all those leaders, political leaders, elected public officials, which opposes this presidential proclamation of the present administration, they should check where they stand. Because again, as a congressman, as a legislator, as an elected public official, we are bound to comply with our commitment with regards to peace agreement with all those rebel groups. And that includes not only these four. And the recent report now is the government of the Republic of the Philippines, and of course, the mainstream CPP, NPA, NDF, is now having not a backdoor because they have already signed a common statement. But I will not comment on that as of now. I will have to see the new framework with regard to, but I fully support as a product of the peace agreement between the government and the rebel groups, just like my rebel brother, Colonel Corubin. And in fact, I've been in the countryside for almost 20 years. I was also a rebel combatant and rebel leader. Well, in fact, I represent as part of the peace panel that signed the first document during the time of then President Erap Estrada. And now I am a congressman and I have my oath to support all the commitments being made, not only by this president of this administration, but by all previous administration, because that is not a mere document. Peace agreement is not just a mere document. It is a commitment by the government. That's number one, Mr. Chairman. Number two, Mr. Chairman, this presidential proclamation, as I've said a while ago, was also pushed by the previous administration. In short, Mr. Chairman, taking into account the peace agreement between the RPMP, RPABB, which I formerly belong, that was 2000 December, that was signed. And now, this is now 2023. This is 20 years. But before I left my group, before I asked permission to them that I will run, and hopefully I can represent the marginalized sector which I fought for during the martial law days. And they allow me, but 23 years. And I told them, if we have waited, especially during the final turnover of firearms and final destruction of all those firearms. And well, in fact, that was the incumbency of the former president, President Duterte, with, of course, Secretary Galvez. Now, I told them, if we have waited for the past 21 years, because that was 2020 or 2021, I forgot the exact year. Medyo edad na tayo. But I told them, if we have waited for almost 20 years, why we can't wait for a day? Why we can't wait for a minute? And now, here's now in front of me, the presidential proclamation being pushed to grant amnesty to all four groups. We have waited for the past several decades. Now, why we can't wait for this? And of course, again, my conclusion to this is a long overdue commitment of the government of the Republic of the Philippines. I will not fault the previous administration, but I hope that this presidential proclamation will be supported by all those elected, appointed, and career service officials of this government. Because again, as I've said, all peace agreement that was signed by the government is not just a mere document. It is a commitment by governments. And we have also to comply with all those international rules, laws with regards to peace agreements. Kaya nga, Mr. Chairman, ako, si Colonel Kerubin nga inaccuse pa na recidivist, of course. Twice siya binigyan. Mas mabilis lang sa kanya. Pero, former comrades, former rebel combatants, former rebel political cadres who are incarcerated as of now because the government filed common crimes against them. But of course, I understand it. That is part of the war, no, of the government against rebel groups and rebel leaders. But of course, for as long as they're qualified, they're suffering incarceration in prison for the past several years and even decades. And supposedly, their political and civil rights and liberties should have been given once again to them. Because they have already surrendered. In the case of all those CPP, NPA, NDF, former CPP, NPA, NDF, that has surrendered voluntarily. Much more on those rebel groups that the government signed a peace agreement. So, Mr. Chairman, again, I'd like to ask, not only, of course, this is a hearing, and I hope members of this Congress will support this for proclamation. Being a former rebel leader, being a former member of the panel of peace negotiation between the government of the Republic of the Philippines and my former group, the RPM, PRP, ABB, and of course, being a former CPP, NPA leader and combatant. Because if we pass this, if we adopt this, if we concord this, and hopefully Senate will not once again oppose the approval of the proclamation with regards to the former CPP, NPA, NDF. I hope that the issues being raised by the Senate last Congress has already been resolved, so that this four proclamation being pushed by the present administration will be implemented, because it's only 2 years. 2 years lang daw yung application process. And for those again, and lastly, Mr. Chairman, for those again who oppose, I want again to reiterate, this is not capitulation of government to rebel groups. Well, in fact, even the ongoing peace negotiation, the resumption of peace negotiation with the CPP, NPA, NDF, of course, again, I cannot comment on the details of that peace agreement, but the peace effort now of the government within the mainstream CPP, NPA, NDF should be supported for as long as a new framework will be, and it should be informed in public. Now, how can we encourage the CPP, the mainstream CPP, NPA, NDF? Kasi, ang amnesty proclamation kasi, ang granting of amnesty, for me, as a former rebel leader, yun yung pinakarurok. Yun yung pinaka-last na commitment ng government, no? That should be given to those groups. Ito yung pinaka-last eh. By restoring the political and civil rights of rebel combatants and rebel political cadres. When I say rebel political cadres, sa politika sila, but they are being charged in common crimes, with common crimes. Now, Mr. Chairman, lastly, Mr. Chairman, again, I would like to reiterate, and gusto ko lang pong diinan that I respect the opinion of those who opposes. But again, this is not capitulation by this government. This is an effort for peace, unity, and progress. And I myself, as a product of the peace agreement, being now a congressman in my last term, 4 na election po. But this is now my last term, and hope in my last term, this presidential proclamation granting amnesty for those 4 groups will be approved by this House or adopted by this House and concurred by the Senate, and hopefully after Christmas, we will start the implementation of this amnesty proclamation, of course, through the National Amnesty Commission. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, the Honorable Paduano.
Mr. Chairman.
You will be the reason, surely, if the applicants of the amnesty will become our competitors in the next election. So the minority leader is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, on the statement of the Honorable Craps Paduano when he stated that he's calling for government officials, elective and appointive, to support this measure. Sa tingin ko parang may naririnig o alam ang ating magiting na kongresista sa mga public officials na hindi sumusuportan nito. Mayroon po ba?
With due respect to, of course, I have to answer the query of the good minority leader. But what I'm saying, I am calling all. But of course, sabi ko na nga, with due respect to all those opinions by elected public officials, baka ill-advise. But tayo, as sinasabi ko lang tayo, as elected public officials, we take our oath to the people of this country and to this government, and we have to support. And again, of course, kahapon, nabasa ko sa balita, sabihin ko na lang, the good Vice President has a dissenting opinion with regards to this peace agreement. I respect her opinion. But of course, what I'm saying is, this is a matter of principle. This is a matter of commitment that all of us, elected public officials, career officials, appointed officials, should comply with our oath. And again, I will just reiterate that this isn't an effort of the present administration. This is not an effort by President Bongbong Marcos. This is an effort made by the former president, no other than President Duterte, and the father of the vice president as of now. This is the commitment of all presidents since the time of President Cory Aquino, the late President Cory Aquino. And each and every one should check ourselves. Yun lang pong challenge. We have to check ourselves as an elected, appointed, and career officials of this government. I hope the good minority leader will satisfy with my answer. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Of course, Mr. Chairman, I'm very much satisfied. That's why I was very bothered by the statement of the Honorable Congressman. Dahil tama po kayo. We are bounded by the same oath na susundin ko ang mga batas, mga kautusang legal at mga dekretong pinaiiral ng mga sadyang itinakdang may kapangyarihan ng Republika ng Pilipinas. This is a proclamation. That's why the executive is bound to follow this proclamation. Where do we debate? Here in Congress, because that is again our function to debate on these matters. Dito lang pwede, hindi pwede sa labas. Kung nasa executive po kayo, you are bounded by the proclamation of the President. Hindi pwede natin ilabas ito. That's why we are sworn to uphold the Constitution of the Republic of the Philippines. Dito, may minority, may majorities para yung mga ibang views natin maipalabas dito. Pero iba yung role ng congressman dahil may sponsor, may contract kasi yung boses ng iba pwedeng ilabas dito. But end of the day, kung ano ang pagkaisahan natin, we are all bounded by that decision. In other words, kung mag-concur tayo lahat dito at mag-concur ang Senado, then yun na ho ang direksyon ng ating bansa. So, kailangan warning po ito sa ating mga government officials that we are bounded by the same oath at may violation tayo pag hindi natin sinunod ang ating oath dito. Marami pong
Thank you,
salamat, Mr.
Minority
Chairman.
Leader. The committee rest assured takes notes of the manifestation of the Honorable Minority Leader and the Honorable Paduano. The committee would like to proceed now to recognize the Honorable Luis Tro for your own interpellation or questions.
Thank
Let us
you,
be,
Mr. Chair.
by the way, to go quick and brief and concise, excepting the Honorable Paduano, who was very emotional earlier. So go ahead, Honorable Luis Tro.
Good morning, everyone. Let me commend first the moving manifestation of Chair Paduano of the Committee on Public Accounts. And being one of his members, now I truly understand where his courage and dedication is coming from. Of course, this representation strongly supports House Concurrent Resolution number 19, 20, 21, and 22, concurring to Proclamation number 403, 404, 405, and 406. And I truly commend His Excellency President Marcos Jr. for initiating this proclamation as a means to promote peace and unity of our nation. And I do take honor and pride to be a member of this joint committee because during my law school days, I only see amnesty in law books. Now, this representation, along with these esteemed colleagues, are living the spirit of amnesty. So for my interpellation, because I am very much concerned about those who wish to avail of the amnesty. And it appears that it is being granted to a group, as mentioned, the RMRP, RPA, ABB. We have the CCP, NPA, NDF. We have MILF and the MNLF. Can we request the chairperson of the National Amnesty Commission, perhaps, to explain in Filipino for the benefit of the people of the Philippines who wish to understand and avail of the benefit of this amnesty?